Out here, there is no shelter and no hangar to pull into. There is no runway to abandon and no way to outrun what is coming. When a storm builds over the open ocean, an aircraft carrier becomes both a fortress and a target. On its flight deck sit dozens of F/A-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, and E-2D Hawkeyes. Each aircraft is worth over $70 million. Some approach $100 million, with upgrades and specialized weapon systems. Together, the aircraft on a single carrier represent billions of dollars in American firepower. When the wind starts screaming at 60 knots and waves climb higher than a 3-story building, those jets cannot just fly away. They have to stay strapped down and exposed. They ride out the storm on a deck that is pitching, rolling, and being hammered by seawater. This is how the United States Navy protects them. The ocean does not give warnings in the traditional sense. It only gives signals, and the Navy reads them all. A few days before a storm hits, carrier meteorologists begin tracking atmospheric pressure systems across hundreds of miles of ocean. They monitor data from multiple sources simultaneously. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, satellites are overhead. Weather buoys are scattered across the sea, alongside shore-based meteorological stations and other ships in the area. All of this information feeds into the ship's meteorological and oceanographic center. This is a small compartment deep inside the carrier where forecasters work in shifts around the clock. Their job goes beyond simply forecasting the weather. They predict how the ship will respond to it. They take into account wind speed, wave height, sea state, and the angle of the swells relative to the ship's heading. A 30-foot wave striking the bow is manageable. However, the same wave hitting the broadside can be extremely dangerous. The meteorological team uses advanced computer models to project storm paths up to 72 hours in advance. These are not guesses. Their calculations are based on pressure gradients, sea surface temperatures, and historical storm behavior in that specific region. When the models show a developing system, the information goes straight to the bridge. The commanding officer reviews the forecast and a decision is made. If possible, the carrier changes course. At 30 knots, a Nimitz-class or Ford-class carrier can cover over 800 miles in a day. That is enough to avoid most storm systems entirely. But sometimes, avoidance is not an option. The mission may require the carrier to hold its position, or the storm may be too large and moving too fast. When that happens, the crew does not panic. They prepare. The order comes down from the bridge, calm and direct. All hands, heavy weather procedures. Secure the ship for Sea State 6. Sea State 6 brings waves between 13 and 20 feet and sustained winds over 40 knots. These are rough conditions, but still manageable for a supercarrier. If the weather deteriorates, the sea state rises to 7, then 8. By sea state 9, waves exceed 45 feet with sustained winds above 55 knots. That is when the real work begins. On the flight deck, the aircraft division springs into action. Yellow shirts, brown shirts, and blue shirts, each color represents a specific job. Every sailor knows exactly what to do. First, the jets are repositioned. On a carrier deck, aircraft are not parked randomly. Their placement is tactical. During normal operations, jets are lined up near the catapults, ready for launch. In a storm, that positioning changes. The priority shifts from a quick launch to maximum security. Aircraft are moved toward the center of the deck, away from the edges where wind and wave action are strongest. They are clustered tightly, wingtip to wingtip, to reduce exposure to gusts. Then come the chains. These are heavy-duty tie-down chains made of hardened steel, each weighing over 40 pounds. They are pulled from deck storage and secured to reinforced hardpoints on each aircraft. Deck crews thread 6 to 9 chains through the airframe's anchor points, depending on the size and weight. FA-18s receive at least 6 chains, while larger planes like the E-2D Hawkeye require more. The chains are tensioned using ratcheting devices until there is no slack. The aircraft is effectively locked to the deck. But chains alone are not enough. Wheel chocks are placed in front of and behind every landing gear tire. These heavy rubber wedges prevent any rolling motion, even if the deck pitches violently. Every tie-down is inspected twice.
Okay, these straps are secure.
Once by the sailor who installed it,
Tension looks good.
and once by a supervisor. There is
Making a
no
note
room
the
for
log
error.
now.
A single loose chain in 60-knot winds can turn a $70 million aircraft into a 30,000-pound projectile. While the flight deck secures the aircraft, the hangar bay below goes through its own transformation. Not all aircraft stay topside during a storm. Some are moved below deck into the hangar bay. This is a massive enclosed space that runs nearly the full length of the ship. Moving a jet from the flight deck to the hangar bay is a complex process. It requires aircraft elevators, massive platforms that lift and lower aircraft between decks. On a Nimitz-class carrier, there are 4 elevators. Each can handle up to 130,000 pounds. The process is slow and deliberate, requiring precise coordination. Once below, the aircraft are secured with the same tie-down procedures used on the flight deck. Here, they are protected from the wind and the waves. The hangar bay doors are closed and remain watertight. Now, the ship itself must prepare. The carrier is not just a floating runway. It is a self-contained city. Like any city facing a natural disaster, it must be locked down. Damage Control Central, located deep within the ship, becomes the operational heart. This is where damage control officers monitor every system and every potential vulnerability. Watertight doors and hatches are sealed throughout the ship.
Confirmed.
There are hundreds of them, designed to compartmentalize the vessel and prevent flooding. Ventilation systems are adjusted. Intakes and exhaust on the weather decks are closed or redirected. This prevents water from being sucked into critical spaces like engine rooms and electrical systems. On the bridge, the officer of the deck works with the helmsman and the navigation team. They must determine the ship's optimal heading. A carrier's hull is designed with a knife-edge bow to cut through waves efficiently. If waves hit from the side, the roll becomes much more severe. The goal is to take the waves at an angle that minimizes both pitching and rolling. Usually, this means heading into the waves at an angle of 15 to 30 degrees off the bow. The ship's speed is adjusted as well. If it goes too fast, the bow will slam into the wave crests, causing enormous stress. If it goes too slow, the ship loses steerage and becomes vulnerable to being pushed broadside. Typically, the carrier maintains around 10 to 15 knots during heavy weather. Below the waterline, the ship's ballast system activates. Carriers have multiple ballast tanks distributed throughout the hull. These tanks are filled or emptied with seawater to adjust trim and stability. In rough seas, ballast is managed to keep the center of gravity low. This creates a righting moment, a force that returns the ship to an upright position when it rolls. As the ship heels over, this righting force grows stronger. It is simple physics keeping a 100,000-ton carrier upright. Then, the storm arrives. The first sign is not the rain, but the wind rising to a roaring gale of 70 knots. Visibility drops as wave spray mixes with rain, turning the air into a gray fog. Anything not secured is gone, swept overboard or slammed into bulkheads. The flight deck, usually a hive of activity, stands empty. Only the rows of chained aircraft remain. Waves begin to break over the bow. Walls of water 40 feet high slam into the ship and roll down the deck. Inside, the crew feels every roll. In extreme storms, the ship may tilt up to 25 degrees. On a vessel over 1,000 feet long, a 20-degree roll causes the deck edge to rise and fall by more than 40 feet. During these conditions, meals are delayed, and movement is limited to essential personnel. Handrails and lifelines become indispensable. In the hangar bay, the aircraft remain motionless. On the bridge, the watch team monitors pitch and roll sensors. The helmsman makes constant micro-adjustments to the rudder to keep the bow aligned. Below, the nuclear reactors generate power, while propulsion systems respond instantly to commands. Everything is functioning exactly as designed. Storms do not last forever. After hours or a full day, the wind begins to ease and the waves drop. The meteorologist reports that the worst is over. The order comes down. Secure from heavy weather, begin flight deck inspection. Deck crews emerge dressed in foul weather gear. They move carefully across the wet,
core
non-skid
remains at a
surface,
steady 100%,
checking every aircraft.
providing clean,
Tie-down chains are
reliable
inspected
energy
for
to the
stress or
grid.
damage. Control surfaces and landing gear are examined for any signs of shifting. Most of the time, everything is intact. The jets are exactly where they were left, soaked but undamaged. Occasionally, minor damage like a bent antenna is found and quickly repaired. The aircraft remains mission capable and ready to launch once the weather clears. The goal is not just to survive the storm. It is to emerge fully operational.
As the radar sweeps the sector,
This
the
ability
intense
is the
red and
result of
orange clutter
preparation,
begins to dissipate,
strict
indicating the
procedures,
storm's core
and
is
disciplined
weakening.
execution. From the meteorologists to the deck crews and the bridge team, every sailor plays a role. The carrier itself is a marvel of engineering, designed to handle forces that would tear smaller ships apart. The aircraft themselves are tougher than they look. Fighter jets are built to withstand G-forces and violent arrested landings. A storm is rough, but it is nothing compared to the stress of combat operations. When the storm passes, the carrier quickly resumes its mission. Jets launch and the ship presses forward, as if the storm never happened. History proves the effectiveness of these methods. In December 1944, Typhoon Cobra caught the U.S. Third Fleet in one of the most violent storms of World War II. Winds reached over 100 knots, and waves towered over 70 feet high. 3 destroyers capsized and sank, claiming nearly 800 sailors. Aircraft were ripped from their tie-downs and thrown overboard. The carriers, however, survived. Among the crew of the USS Monterey was a young officer named Gerald Ford, the future president of the United States. He helped fight fires and save the ship. The Monterey was repaired and eventually returned to service. That storm taught the Navy lessons that still apply today. We now have better forecasting, improved tie-down procedures, and stronger protocols. Modern carriers are larger, more stable, and better equipped. But the core principles remain the same: prepare, secure, adapt, and survive. At sea, the mission does not stop for the weather. Before we go, here's a question for you. If you were the commanding officer of a carrier and a major storm was approaching, what would you do? Would you try to outrun it? Or would you hold your position and ride it out? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your take. If you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories from the world's Navy. This is how it actually works. No Hollywood, no exaggeration, just the truth. If you want to support the channel directly, join the fleet. You will get loyalty badges and priority responses while helping us bring more maritime stories to light.
And here we see the
Just click
controlled
join
internal
on our
ignition,
channel page to
creating
get on
that
board.
incredible
Thanks for
swirling
watching.
vortex
Stay
of
safe out
superheated
there.
blue and
Remember,
orange flame.
when the storm hits, the Navy does not run, it adapts. I will see you in the next one.